Hello, my friends. I've been reading so many like ooey gooey romance books, weird girl books. It's time to get back to horror. So welcome to a week of horror. Actually, I don't know if it's going to be a week. I am starting a series and I kind of just want to pick up as many books as I want until I get sick of reading for the video, and then I'll just post the video. And then the next episode will pick up where we left off. So to begin, here's the concept. About 5 months ago, Goodreads put out this list, the best 8 horror books from every single year for the past 10 years. I came back with my own list. I made a video, responded to their list, made my own list of 8 books every single year, the best horror that I read that was published in each respective year. Now, there were some years that I didn't have 8 books. I don't have 8 favorites. So the goal of this video series is to fill in all of the missing spots. So we're going back in time. I'm going to read some books from 2016 in this video. I'll move on to 2017, then 2019. But there's also a chance I read 5 books in this video and I don't find anything to fill in that one spot that's missing from 2016. But also, I'm not necessarily going to stop 2016 immediately after finding a 5-star from 2016, because not only could I fill in that missing spot, but I could also try to find better quality books to replace some of the other spots that are already taken. My list here from 2016, the best horror I've read from 2016, only one of these is a 5-star, The House at the Bottom of the Lake. I definitely stand by The Ballad of Black Tom being here, Mongrels being here, My Best Friend's Exorcism. Like, those 4 are solid to me. And I'm thinking of ending things. I definitely co-sign with Goodreads that this is a best horror from 2016. I actually only gave it 3 stars, but I recommend it all the time. I just realized the focus square was on this guy and not my actual face. Anyway, we could get through 2016 in this video. It could take 3 videos in the series to get through 2016. Like, I have no idea what's gonna happen. I'm just picking up some books from this year in publishing. And the first thing I'm going to try out, I feel like I should probably just take Goodreads' recommendation, believe in them that The Fisherman is one of the best books, so I will be reading that. I'm also going to try out Hex. This was, I think, originally published in its original language in 2016. Also, there was just this article that came out from Stephen Graham Jones, which I filmed a reaction to, and I was going to do an entire video going through all of his favorite slashers. He listed 13, but some of them I've already read. There's quite a few I'm really not interested in. And as I was building for a separate video, I realized a couple of those came out in 2016, so maybe I could just try out Young Slasher and the Con season in this video if my thrift books package arrives on time. Also, one of the only Paul Tremblays that I've never read came out in 2016, so that's on its way from the library. There's a couple short story collections I could try out. I don't totally have a plan. I'm just gonna read whatever I want, but there is a theme, obviously. The only one for sure I know I'm going to read to completion is The Fisherman, because I did select it for my Literally Dead book club pick of the month. So as soon as I start in on that, I will check in with you. Okay, I have started The Fisherman. It has been a long day and it's only noon. We're approaching Easter weekend and I have the live show for The Fisherman for the Literally Dead book club. So I need to finish this. I need to prepare and then send that out to everybody and do the live show. I've been picking up and putting it down quite a few times over the last, I would say, 3 days. And now I'm 132 pages in, not for lack of interest, but because my brain is just so scrambled in 20 different directions. Also this weekend, Liam should be having his next treatment. And I don't know, it's just like you'd think that the diagnosis part of a disease is like the hard part, is like the part that like you have to get in front of the right people and you have to talk to them and you have to get, you know, it was so much for like a year. And then it's like, okay, here's a treatment. But actually getting it happening is also like such a struggle. I think it's because I'm dealing with 2 different hospitals, the local one and the Vancouver one, and getting them to like communicate and collaborate. I'm like chasing people down. I'm like, we're supposed to have this procedure this weekend. I haven't gotten a single call from like either party. Meanwhile, I got off the phone 2 weeks ago with the dates like penciled in, and then the orders were supposed to go through. And then I call and I'm like, I haven't gotten any information there. He's like, oh, I'll send the orders through right now. I'm like, what do you mean you'll send the orders through right now? Obviously this is very unrelated to the book, but that's what's on my mind today. So I need to lock in. Let's see how much I can get through. I just read a book recently that did this exact same thing, Erasure by Percival Everett. Erasure? Somebody commented and said that I'm pronouncing it wrong. Erasure. And when you pick up that book, it's like one story and then it goes into a novel within the novel, but for so much longer than you would expect. And that's what's happening in The Fisherman. It's like that story is the story. And maybe we'll only get a little intro and an outro actually following the people we met at the beginning. So we have Abe and Dan. They are two widowers. I was gonna say they're friends. They're not necessarily friends at the beginning. And I also think there's like some toxic masculinity stuff that's making them not really feel like they can even call each other friends or do anything without an activity. So they connect because they have lost their wives, and one of them invites the other on a fishing trip and they just start fishing together. And then once fishing season is over, the one guy is like, I would love to invite him over and we could still talk, but you can't just invite another dude over to talk. But they do get closer and they do open up to one another. And there's this feeling of being compelled by the river and the idea of fishing to begin with. And at the start, we got their connection, we got how their wives died, and then a dream from Abe where he saw his wife like in this river. He was like fishing and like his wife was fished out of the river. And then they go into this diner, and the person at the diner is telling them this story because they want to head to this river or this creek that they're not supposed to, or that like no one's ever heard of, and like no one talks about that creek. You don't want to go to that creek. And he's trying to warn them off from it, and then ends up getting into a story. And so once we're 46 pages in, the book becomes that story being the origin of this like small towns along the creek, decades ago, centuries ago. I can't remember the year. See, this is the trouble when I'm trying to build a book club discussion of this. I have to pay really close attention, and my brain just cannot do it right now. It was like the 18-somethings, I think. We're following these various families, and I don't want to give too much away. There's this rumor of Der Fisher, this mysterious figure, this fisherman who hangs out at the creek, and this story within the story has all of these moving parts and all of these people, and there's death, and there's a graveyard, and trying to move the graveyard and make room for this reservoir, and maybe like the spirits of the area are angry about a reservoir being put there. I'm intrigued. I like the writing. There's been some gross visuals, and I like getting to know these two men and how different they are. We're getting little insight into their characteristics, but I don't think we get back to them for like 100 more pages if I'm perceiving this properly. And every time I flip through it just a little bit, I see a random different name I haven't even been introduced to yet. So I need to start making a character map to keep track of everything that's happening. The Fisherman for me ended up being a 3-star read. The live show was really fun. Everyone had such different thoughts. In the same way that I often go into a live show with really strong opinions, and like it sounds like I'm trying to convince people to like books more than they did by saying like, well, that whatever issue you have with that was intentional. That's what the book was trying to do. You could definitely try to talk me out of my own like negative points for this book by saying like, that's what it wanted to do. For example, there's no real, there are some women in this story who get more than just a mention for a page, but the majority of women in here are dead. There's probably 8 different women who are just dead wives, and that's all they kind of amount to. And even our 2 main male characters, they are grieving these women, but we don't know anything about them. We don't see any of their interactions. There's so many flashbacks and things, and we never spend time flashing back on these women. Never see why they love them. It's just because they're women, because they're our wives. Like, obviously we love them. Like, that's what the takeaway is supposed to be. And you could say that's not what the story's trying to be about. It's trying to be about these men. And you could even say it wants to leave the women out because it shows something like that they didn't appreciate them to begin with. But to me, it just felt like a dude writing horror about dudes who didn't care enough about female characters to give them any time and attention. And especially with a story about grief, there is no emotional weight with these characters, like we hear that they're grieving and that's kind of it. And I need a little more talking about these people that they lost and memories and just evidence. And I said in the live show that I think this could have been reworked into a short story collection, and I would have liked it quite a bit more because it wouldn't just be this giant 200-page chunk in the middle that was the story. We could have gone current day, past, current day, past, current day, past, and we could have visited all of the things within it that I wanted to. We could have seen memories with these women, but then also we could have gotten more backstory with certain characters who I was really enjoying and I was intrigued by. There is an hour-and-a-half live show where I get into all of my nitty-gritty thoughts, and everybody brought things to the table that were really interesting to discuss. This just wasn't my perfect idea of a cosmic horror, nor my perfect idea of what a grief horror looks like. It did well in the folksiness of it, but folk horror isn't my favorite. So the fact that we are back in time and there are all of these characters in this small kind of village and we're just reading about their interactions, it was good, it wasn't great. What it did well was the descriptive, gruesome scenes. And therefore, this is staying the same. Sure, I could plop this in and say, like, technically at a 3-star, it is now a favorite from that time, but that doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right to put anything under a 4 in that coveted position. And next, I will talk to you about Hex. I'm DNFing Hex. I know. No one is more upset than me. I bought this full price. I was like, surely this is going to be something that I'm into, because when I posted that I was going to read it, half the people who responded said, you're going to hate that book. And the other half who responded said, oh my God, that's my favorite. You're going to love it. So I thought, surely I will have something interesting to say about it at the very least. But I got halfway through, not quite halfway through. And the pitch is as follows. Whoever is born here is doomed to stay till death. Whoever settles never leaves. Welcome to Black Spring, the seemingly picturesque Hudson Valley town haunted by the Black Rock Witch, the 17th century woman whose eyes and mouths are sewn shut. I feel as though that is just a giant metaphor for like people feeling muzzled or muzzling themselves and thinking that that is the way to like further their lives or further society, is to not speak up, to not speak out, to do things the way they've always been done, to be conservative, and that's the way that things will be accomplished. The elders of Black Spring have virtually quarantined the town by using high-tech surveillance to prevent this curse from spreading. They have this big fear of what will happen with the supernatural, and they are, I believe, in turn harming their own community because they're not furthering anything. They're not listening to anyone else who has any other ideas. They're just like, this is the way we've always done things. This is the way we're going to do things. And I think that the point is that the townspeople, in theory, are scarier than even the witch. I read a book that felt like it had a really similar message recently, and I just feel like the end of this book is going to be like the townspeople getting taken out by the witch. And I'm so bored 150 pages in that I just can't imagine reading 200 more pages to get to what I don't think is a very interesting ending or story. Just the vibes that I'm getting. It's that for one, but two, the writing style. I don't know how to pinpoint exactly what it is, but you know how you read an author and you can immediately recognize that you're going to love their style? This is the opposite for me. I just know that this isn't the vibe, but I can't explain it specifically. It's reminding me of 2 other books. I can't remember, something Descendant and Dead 11. If you loved Dead 11, I liked Dead 11. I think you would love Hex. I gave Dead 11 in the 3s, high 3s. I feel like this will be a 3 by the end, and I just can't spend any time on a 3-star horror. We just have a bunch of dude POVs and then one wretched lady. I do often like books about obsession, and that feels like what the story is doing. They're obsessed with the idea of this witch, what could happen with this witch, and so they're just obsessively tracking this witch. They only feel safe when they can see her, which I also think is a big metaphor for some other, I don't know, mental health things. I don't love what the author is doing with this story. And look who blurbed it. Stephen King. If Stephen King loves a book, I'm probably not going to love the book. This is definitely going to be a disappointment for some people who wanted my thoughts on this. It's a disappointment to me, but I have to read something else because I just am so uninterested in the story. I consider Paul Tremblay one of my favorite authors, for sure. Even though I don't love absolutely everything from him. In fact, I've rated a couple of his books 2 stars, but because I've had some wins, and especially when there's an author who seems to get, or a book that gets low average ratings, and I love it, I'm like, well, that's an author for me. That's a favorite author of mine. So my favorite books of his, like in order, are probably, I would imagine, his lowest rated by the public. The Pallbearers Club is my favorite. It's one of my favorite books ever. I'm not gonna harp on it. I don't get why people don't like it. And then next is, I don't know if it's horror movie or The Cabin at the End of the World. I feel like Cabin at the End of the World, but I've never reread it. And I know in the moment I gave it a 4, but in my mind that is a 5-star favorite of mine. And then horror movie is more of an objective favorite. Then A Head Full of Ghosts didn't work for me as much as other people. Survivor Song, maybe I like about the same as everyone else. I give that like, no, I give that a 2, but I think it's nobody's like favorite Paul Tremblay. Anyway, so this one is his second publication, and I think it came after a lot of people loved A Head Full of Ghosts. I don't know the exact numbers, but I feel like this isn't like a beloved book from him by any means, but maybe it's coming off of everyone's love for A Head Full of Ghosts. They were like, this is just kind of whatever. And so I've never really felt motivation to pick it up. I probably owned it at one point and then unhauled it without reading it, but I am dedicated to it now because I'm halfway through. I read half of it last night. I will say I'm bored, but I am interested. So with Hex, I could imagine where the story was going. With Disappearance at Devil's Rock, I'm equally as bored, but I'm interested in what the reveal is going to be. And I feel like Paul Tremblay is a very vibe-based author. And if you're not liking the vibe from the very beginning, you're not suddenly going to fall in love with the book. Like, he sets a tone really early on. And then every single one of his books, I think, has a reveal. Some better than others, some more shocking than others, but there's always a moment where he is trying to pull the rug out from under you a little bit. And I'm invested enough in the story that I do want to get to that part, and I want the payoff. Even though at this point, 200 pages in, well, this is like the little mass market one, but I feel like you could probably skip the first 200 pages of this book. Like, genuinely. You could read the first chapter, meet this missing boy, and then skip all of this. That's how little has happened. They're still just talking about this missing boy. He has a mother and a sister, and he has a couple of friends, and one night they were all out playing together, and suddenly the boy ran off. And they're interviewing the boys, and they find out they were drinking a little bit, so maybe that's why he ran away. There was a random person that they recently met, so maybe that person's responsible. They're finding journal pages from him around the house, and they're kind of accusing his sister of leaving them out. But she's adamant that she isn't doing that, and so everyone in the story is kind of starting to think there's something supernatural at play, but there's been nothing proven. There has been no answers, and it's really just been a lot of back and forth between the same kind of 5 people having the same conversation over and over and over again. It's like, do you know what happened to the boys? No, I don't. Are you sure you don't know? No, I don't. Are you sure you're not lying? You have a history of not telling the truth all the time. No, I'm telling the truth this time. Then a couple pages later, we find out that somebody wasn't being completely truthful. And it was like, we just read 3 chapters of the same conversation, trying to get to the same result. And the person was adamant that they were telling the truth. And then after 3 chapters of that, they said, oh no, I actually have a little more information than I was willing to tell you. It just feels like a really big waste when some character has all the information and it's just being withheld from us for hundreds of pages for seemingly no reason. It's just not a very well crafted mystery to me, but I want to know so desperately what happened to this little boy. Like, I need to know, and I can't just flip to the end and find out. I'm in it, I'm invested, and this could genuinely be a 2-star or it could be a 4-star. Because I can be bored. I can have nothing happen if there's a good payoff. Nothing is clear and no one can be trusted. And that's annoying, but also kind of fun. See you in a minute. I'm not done reading my book yet, but look what just arrived. You can't tell what it is. It's my thrift books box. This is perfect timing because I didn't know what I was going to read next. And there is definitely going to be a next. We're continuing. We're persevering. We will find a 5-star. We've got Young Slasher. We've got the Con Season. These feel brand new. Does Thrift Books also sell things brand new? Is it also, can people just post things there instead of like Amazon? Because these very much feel like Amazon printed books. Anyway, I don't have very much faith in these as an experience. I don't trust that I'll finish either of them, but I'm excited to try them both out. My friends, I have bad news to report. I didn't love this. We are not, in fact, replacing anything. Not swapping out, not plopping in, nothing is being altered here. I didn't like this any more than whatever the Ian Reid one is. I would probably give it a similar rating, but I would recommend it less, even though this has a higher average Goodreads rating. I just don't think this was particularly interesting, maybe at its time, because I do think more and more these days, horror and romance especially, those two genres, not a lot of them have longevity. They're best read in their time, with everything being published at their time and where the world was at the time. And I think that's why we might struggle in this series. Always going back a decade and trying to find 5 stars, it's starting to seem crazy. This is a fine book, a good book even. It's just not standing the test of time. I would say this was kind of a mix of vibes between, I want to say Criminal Minds, an episode of Criminal Minds, with a little bit less of the detective investigating stuff, but there is some of that. And like the first 3 episodes of Stranger Things. You know how I actually, thinking about Stranger Things, you know how I always talk about how book series get more and more fantastical over time? I feel like I should just start comparing them to Stranger Things. Like, you know how Stranger Things, the first season was just 80s nostalgia. It was just fun. It was kids on bikes and it was friendship and it was just like vibey, especially like the first half of the first season. And by the time we get to the whatever season just happened, the finale, it's like none of those vibes are there at all, because we're in a completely different realm. Once we start learning things and everyone starts changing, it's like a totally different genre by that point. Like, we're in a totally different universe. And that's what I feel about so many fantasy series that I read. Whatever happened in the first book and the reason that I got into it and I loved it to begin with doesn't exist once we're in the 3rd book in the series. But specifically, like the obsession of the mother and willing to do anything to get her child back, like that is the vibe of this book. Then the way that their story goes and how the characters are being interviewed and we're slowly piecing things together and you're getting these flashbacks to these really horrific moments that happened, it felt like Criminal Minds. I guess I was a little bit bummed there wasn't many twists and turns and reveals that really got me. There was one moment I kind of wish I had filmed myself reading this. All you would have seen is my reaction. Here, I'll recreate it for you. Oh, why'd they do that? That's what you missed. I almost wish he had leaned into this just being a collection of documents, because there's interviews, there's journal entries, don't look too closely at that, transcripts and stuff, and maybe it could have just been that completely, because then at least you have a gimmick to go along with what you're doing. And he's definitely leaned into the gimmick the further we've gone into his career. And when I call this boring, obviously, I think his lowly rated ones that I love, other people would call far more boring than this. But there's just some type of quality with the style, the pretentiousness, and the characters and the narrative voice. It's really about the writing itself that is what pulls me into these ones. And this just feels like somebody at the beginning of a publishing journey and getting more and more niche as he goes. Because really, this could have been written by anybody. I'm glad Stephen King loved it. Stephen King and I, historically, do not agree. If I see his blurb on a book, I usually don't like it. Anyway, this one was a 3, and we must move on. I am starting to think this episode doesn't work. This whole series isn't gonna work because these don't really feel like it either, and I'm just not finding very much from 2016 that intrigues me. But these are both beloved by Stephen Graham Jones, a favorite author of mine. And what's fun about the amount of books that I have read because of him, either he's blurbed them or recommended them in some capacity, is both of these opened and I felt very clear why Stephen Graham Jones himself would love these. Like, I feel like I'm in the mind of Stephen Graham Jones. Like, I get it. This one feels like a combination of a couple of his books. And it has that direct-to-reader style that sometimes I like, sometimes I don't. It depends on how the author is actually pulling it off. And in here, we have a character who is like, my name's Mia, and I'm a badass. Like, that kind of vibe. She is Australian. And I would bet money on this author, S. Eliot Brandis, not being an Australian, because it was so, I don't know, like trying to sound Australian and also so obsessed with like American culture just in that first chapter and being like, this is nothing like America. In Australia, we do things this way. As if the only person who could possibly be reading this would be American. So I read the first chapter, then I read the second chapter, and I just don't think this is gonna be the one for me. It kicks off with this kind of style. Okay, you probably have a bunch of questions. That's good. I have a shitload of answers, but you can't rush me. Me, covered in blood. That's the culmination of months of planning and hard work. It's the climax, the crescendo, the reward. Oh, but it's supposed to be in an Australian accent. Hold on. You probably have a bunch of questions. Cut that out. Cut that. Kayla, when I say cut that out, I mean cut that out in editing. I'm 17 years old in my last year of high school. I like punk rock, old and new, and melodic death metal. Yes, that's a thing. I read comics, watch horror movies, and occasionally drop pills that I steal from my strung out mom. So maybe I'm not your typical Australian schoolgirl, but I'm not off the scale either. I like to think I have character. I guess the vibe is there's a group of teenagers who ruin her life, and so she wants to get revenge on them, so she's gonna kill them all. And by what I read in the little prologue, it seems like she succeeded. It did not do anything for me. I could see myself coming back to it to give it another go if the con season is not for me. This is by Adam Caesar. I think it was pronounced Caesar. This is the author of Clown in the Cornfields. And I was just looking up these authors. This one, no information about them anywhere. And this, he has a YouTube channel. So that's kind of fun. And in here, I liked the writing quite a bit more. We have Clarissa, and she is a former horror movie star. In the first chapter, we saw her go to a convention, and it was just, well, actually, yeah, that was the first chapter. But there was also a prologue following a different person who was getting arrested. But it seems like the cops who pulled him over aren't really cops. It's hard to know. And he has the back of his vehicle filled with really gruesome props and stuff from horror movies. And he's like, when I open this up and you see the disgusting things like nipples and I don't remember what else he said. Nipples? That's all you can remember, Kayla? A girl's severed head with her nipples stapled over her eyes. You can see now why that made an impression on me. And then he gets punched, like knocked out by these cops. And that's like his last memory. And I wonder if we're gonna get back to him. So I am intrigued. I'm not really the most interested in following a former TV star, but I don't think it's really about her fame. I mean, I'm sure it is because it's inspired whoever's going to end up capturing her. Like they're inviting, somebody, it hasn't happened yet, is going to invite her based on the synopsis to like a sleepover camp. And when she gets there, there's a bunch of other people there. Maybe they are all kind of former stars. And then they're gonna kill everybody, I guess, at the camp. I'm assuming she's gonna be the final girl by the end. Deep in the woods of Kentucky with a supporting cast of B-level celebrities, Clarissa must fight to survive the deadly games that the con's organizers have rigged against her. Yeah, I mean, it's under 200 pages, so I feel like this is an easier one to commit to than this. Like, there's no way either of these is gonna be above a 3, but like, I don't even know what else to read at this point. I was really just banking on The Fisherman, Hex, or Disappearance at Devil's Rock to be wins. And the fact that they're not has me floundering. I don't even like extreme horror, so I don't know what I'm doing. But I think this has the potential to be fun, maybe. We just got a package. We just got a package. We just got a package. Wonder who it's from. We know who it's from. Grove Atlantic. I apparently have just been handing out my address left and right lately because I can't even think of what arc was offered to me. Or what I said yes to. It feels thick. A reason I need to wrap up this video, honestly, is because one, my book of the month package just came and Molka was in it. My aardvark package is almost here and it has the new Kylie Lee Baker Japanese Gothic in it. And maybe this is a horror and I just need to move on to new horror and stop thinking about old horror. Let's find out what it is together. Oh my God, Solace House. This is so big. Why is it so big? Is this horror? I think it's like gothic. An addictive and brilliant puzzle box of a novel. I put this in a recent upcoming books that I think I want to read video, and then the publisher messaged me and they were like, do you want it? And I was like, obviously. This is by Will McLean. It's set at university, and there's a group of students. They work at Solace House, a dilapidated Victorian mansion. They become enthralled by elaborate and eerie journals of the house's former owner. There's obsession, there's mystery, there's a realm to enter. Oh my god, it doesn't come out till October? Okay, I have plenty of time to get to this. Keep an eye out for a review at some point before October. Promise. Sadly, I have been struggling through this. I finished it and I don't really have much to say. Didn't really have much to say while I was reading it. I don't want to give it a really low rating because then I'm obligated to make this a spoiler-filled review for my channel members that I promised every quarter. And anything that I give like a 2.5 below, I'm supposed to fully, and I really like don't care, and I feel like every single page I was just wiping my memory of the page before, and I don't even know how I would spoil this one. We do have Clarissa, who's the main character, but we are also reading from so many other perspectives. In fact, it started to feel kind of like Fantastic Land in that there were different groups of young people who were doing violence onto each other, but without the intriguing part of Fantastic Land, which is that it's written in interviews and it's like after the fact. There was weirdly a lot of buildup and a lot of description for very little actual violence, or specifically killing, and the ending was ambiguous in a way that doesn't feel fun, but feels like it was setting itself up for a sequel that I don't think ever came. And man, did we get a lot of motivation considering how short this book is. And I love a horror novella, but when I love a horror novella, I want it to be maybe hovering like 150 pages max. This was closer to 200. And at that point, it just feels like an awkward length. I want it short and concise, or I want it longer. And building it out with this much backstory and reason behind everything just feels like something that I don't like, which is a lot of villainous monologue. And usually it's at the end of the book when a character's like, and here's the reason I was doing everything, and it just goes on and on and on and on. In here, that was before anything bad happened. We were just being told all of the reasons why the bad things were gonna happen and why they were planning things this way. It wasn't interesting. It didn't give much tension. I felt really unsatisfied and really uninterested in this book and everyone we were following, and yeah. Doesn't sound like a 3, does it? Sounds like a 2. Anyway, I'm glad I gave it a go. And I think if you love modern day slasher novels, which I don't really pick up a ton of. My taste in horror is a little more specific, but I don't know exactly how to summarize what it is. But it's not just the quick, crazy stuff that could easily turn into like an indie horror film. Anyway, I'm kind of glad it's over. The last 3 days I have been in the trenches. I have been trying to find a book that I want to complete, and I've been testing out so many things. So technically I've DNF'd like 10 books this week. I figured let me revisit all of the books that Goodreads says is the best, because we should listen to Goodreads. From their 2016 list, Lovecraft Country is not for me. Joe Hill is not for me. The Last Days of Jack Sparks, I thought maybe, and then when it got out of the intro and got into like the exorcism and priest stuff, I wasn't interested anymore. I tried out the Darcy Coates, who I also don't think is an author for me, and the narrator was gasping for air between sentences and I could not listen to it. So then I thought, let me go back to the Goodreads Choice Awards for horror, because there's going to be like 20 books there, more so than just the 8. And I tried out Mr. Splitfoot. That was the only one here that really intrigued me. Well, it didn't really intrigue me, like a little bit, and I didn't like it. There's a lot of series here, like sequels. I'm not interested in The Butterfly Garden. This one is definitely like, is this not an erotic thriller? And then a whole bunch of these covers, like not to judge a book by its cover, but I'm going to. Like there's a lot of 2016 horror that doesn't look like something that I would want to read. Then I started 2 short story collections, and I didn't like the first couple stories in each, and I did purchase the ebooks. So I'm out of money now and out of luck, it feels. But then I put on my Stephen King shirt to inspire me. I may not like what Stephen King likes, but I do like Stephen King. And I was just sitting here and I was thinking, what about all of those authors in that collection, that anthology that I got introduced to last year? This is a book inspired by The Stand by Stephen King, and I did this whole video where I guessed which author wrote each story. I read like 100 short stories in preparation for it, and I got introduced to a couple authors. So I thought, rather than trusting Goodreads, like, let me do my own research, because I am good at doing that. So I went through all of the authors that I got introduced to. I looked at whose stories I liked, and I looked them up to see if they had any books out in 2016. One of them does, and that's Jonathan Janz. This is called Children of the Dark. I couldn't get my hands on a physical copy in time if I want this video to go out this weekend. It's a coming of age story starring 15-year-old boys. They're playing baseball. We just started baseball season. I have a 15-year-old son. It just, like, the vibes felt right. And I liked Lenora in this collection by Jonathan Janz. I gave it 4 stars, and his writing kind of reminded me of like Josh Malerman and Paul Tremblay a little bit. So I grabbed the audiobook. I like the narration, and this doesn't really feel like it came out in 2016. Not that that was so long ago, but with a lot of the horror from 10 years ago, it just feels, I don't know, a lot of it feels the same. And maybe it's because it's from similar voices, but this one did intrigue me the first couple chapters. We have a boy, his mother is not caring for him and his sister properly, and so he is responsible for his younger sister. And there is this maybe escaped serial killer that everyone is scared of, but also he's worried about baseball and girls, and it's very thoughtful as far as like a lot of this age range starring in horror. Like, he is just kind of a kind teenage boy. It feels more reflective, like he's looking back on it as an adult, because he's saying things like, all of these people would be dead by, like, that was the end of the very first chapter. All these people would be dead by the end of the summer or at some point. So there's constant foreshadowing for bad things to come. And he's always saying kind of teenage boy things and then going, well, that wasn't really fair. And he's talking about girls and he's like, well, she doesn't belong to me. She doesn't belong to anyone. She's her own person, and I shouldn't be thinking of her like this. And it's like he's fighting against his own instincts. And I just have a good feeling about this one. Who blurbed it? Hopefully not Stephen King. Okay, Brian Keene. We're okay. 2 weeks. I've been slowly working on this video, and every time I pick up a book, I'm like, this isn't the one. This could be the one. This was not, in fact, the one. I'm gonna give it 3 stars. The first quarter was really interesting. The second quarter was fine. The last half, I was like, whatever. I saw it tagged on Goodreads as YA, but on every bookseller website, it's tagged as adult. And I think a lot of people will say, oh, it's YA because it follows teens. So I was ready to just ignore that. But it really did feel like it was for teens. But I don't think it was objectively bad. I just think all of the characters fit into the stereotypes that they were designed for. It all went in the exact direction that you kind of expect. There's like 10 different moments where people are in grave danger and they get out of it at the very last second. I think it could feel a really edge of your seat and action-packed and interesting if you were a teenager. I am not a teenager, nor was I even a teenager in 2016. I think I probably would have given it the same rating if I read it back then. Maybe it would have been more like a 3.5. But having read now like what the horror genre has to offer, I just know my taste. If a book talk existed in 2016 in the capacity it does right now, this would easily be on a list of like, oh, everyone's just watching the first season of Stranger Things, this crazy show. Here's 10 book recommendations you have to read if you love Stranger Things. Like, this would be on the list. Disappearance at Devil's Rock would be on that list. And interestingly, like, is it just the books that I'm reading? Or was there something about this time where horror was so much about teenage boys? Like, every single horror book stars a teenage protagonist. Even the ones I loved, like House at the Bottom of the Lake, teenager. Fantastic Land, teenagers. Mongrels, teenager. If you read this one back in 2016 and you want something similar, definitely less monstrous, like this one combines real life danger, like a serial killer, and also ancient beasts is what I think the synopsis says, without so much the ancient beasts, but a similar kind of vibe is I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones. That's my favorite book from my favorite author, and I feel like it's a kind of upgraded version of this story. I'm still so butthurt that Stephen Graham Jones was not one of the authors in the anthology, The End of the World as We Know It. Because we could have gotten a really weird Stephen Graham Jones story in there. I wish Stephen Graham Jones had some other, I guess I don't know for a fact he doesn't have any other 2016 releases. I'm assuming he doesn't have any more. I do think this book balanced things well, and it was everything it set out to be. It just wasn't my perfect kind of horror. There's no scares in this book for sure. I don't even know if I would put this in the horror genre. I would probably just put it in like a YA paranormal box. And that's it for me today. This is gonna be our final read for the video, regardless if it's a 2-star or a 5-star. It's ending here. I just feel like I should put this out and get more niche recommendations from anybody who wants to scour their Goodreads and tell me some other good ones from 2016 and 2017 while you're at it. Because I went back to this video looking through the comments, and most of the comments that came in, thank you so much, were just about the books that I had already talked about that I was considering reading. Now, this book that I'm about to unpack, because I just expeditedly got it shipped to me, is inspired by Becky Siegel Spratford. She is somebody who is like a huge supporter of the horror genre, has had this blog going for over 10 years, and who was really one of the original, I think, horror bloggers. This book is edited by her. I read it last year. I loved it. And in it, it's basically a bunch of essays from some of my favorite authors. Speaking of Stephen Graham Jones, he is in here. I did look, and he has like a couple short stories that came out that year. No other novels or anthologies from just him. We also have Nuzo Ono in here, which will be relevant in just a moment. And I just loved reading this, and the intro from her and the intro for each author was just really well done. Like if I was ever to edit an anthology, this would be my inspiration. This is what I've always wanted an anthology or an essay collection to look like. She takes the perfect amount of time to introduce us to the author, and then also tells us comparable authors we might enjoy. I just thought this was fantastic. So I was like, let me look at her blog, because she's probably talking about things that came out in 2016. And yes, indeed, there was this anthology, and it's pretty short, and I'm gonna benefit in one or two of two ways. One, this could be a big win for me, and I could officially slot something into that spot. And or two, I'm gonna get introduced to a whole bunch of authors I've never read from before, because the only one in here that I've experienced is Nuzo Ono. This is the 6th book in an annual series that was coming out, is still coming out? No idea, called Lights Out. This one is called Resurrection, and I guess the 6th one was super special. They were bringing certain stories back. The pitch of this just felt really interesting, and all of the authors are African. The theme of resurrection is focused on with the stories being about resurrecting the dead, and the goal was like buried stories, buried authors, ones who haven't gotten enough attention and promotion. Maybe stories that have appeared in print but never online, self-published writers, with some of the endings changed, more fleshed out characters. They want these stories to rise and live again. I'm hyped about this. I'll check in with you after the first couple stories. Okay, the first 3 stories are pretty much everything that you expect from a collection themed like this. The first one was called Daughter Dearest. It was zombie-ish. I gave it 2 stars. The concept was good. It was like a mother willing to do anything to get her child back, but it's just okay. The second story was called Shame by Naren Dorman. I'm gonna terribly pronounce all of these. Chioma Adukwe was the first one. This one was also 2 stars, and it was another like kind of illness taking over. This one was more rabies, and it was about being holed up and trying to survive. It had a lot of other themes. It was a longer one. I just didn't think that the horror was balanced with the other stuff as well as I would have liked. Sleep Papa Sleep by Suyu Davies Okungaboya. I gave a 3.5. This was a person kind of being haunted. There was the theme of madness. There was a mutilated dead body, definitely the most horrific so far, and about like trades and deals. Interesting concept. So right now the collection is at a 2.5, and we need to bring it up to a 4 to get it in here. Or like a 3.75, I would take a 3.75. Next 3 stories done. We got a 4-star with Blood and Fire by Sawale. This was vampire-y, very gruesome, definitely the most horror feeling of any of these so far. And it was about like corruption within the church. Then Koi Koi by Raymond Ellenwoke. I gave 3 stars. This is apparently a classic Nigerian urban legend, the Lady Koi Koi. It was almost a revenge story, but it didn't have, well, it just didn't have enough plot. It was like a little bit too vague for me to love it. And then we had Eaters of Flesh by Ezeok Chukwanonzo. I gave this one 3 stars based on the title. Eaters of Flesh. You can imagine the creaturous entity or experience that we have going on in here. I wish it wasn't called Eaters of Flesh, because then maybe halfway through the story when it revealed that people were eating each other, it could have been a surprise. There was mental health explored that I liked. And yeah, right now we're at a 3-star average, which means in order to get it on here, the last 4 stories all have to be 5 stars, which is possible because sometimes a collection goes in order, either intentionally or not, leaving the best till last. I guess I'll just read this one on camera because we'll know based if this gets a 5, then we still have hope. A Fin by Edwin Okolo. Okay, I was not expecting that. We did get a 5 star. What the heck? I didn't film myself reading any of the other ones and I would have just been sitting here like this the entire time. Some of them were interesting, but no story has done that. That was like fairy tale, disgusting. I had to recheck who the author was because I thought that reads exactly like Nuzo Ano. Oh my gosh, it was like Snow White, a revenge witch tale based around Snow White. I was really concerned at first because she was brought into this like family to be one of the women sleeping with this man. She was like, I can't wait until I'm 16 and I can get it on with him. There's rumors of like he has a giant appendage, and I was like, what are we doing? But then everybody got their just desserts. Fuck, that was good. Okay, let's just keep going. Next up we have Hadiza by Nuzo Ano. Suddenly we're back in the game. Yeah, we lost the streak. Is it a streak if it was only 1 5-star? Hadiza was a 4. It was a proper revenge story. It was the longest story in here, I'm pretty sure. And it was good. This man doesn't want to choose just one wife, and he doesn't want any of the repercussions of having multiple or abandoning one, and revenge upon him. The Wild Dogs by Mandisi Nkomo was another long one. It was another kind of zombie story. I feel like it should have ended, well, not technically zombies, but that was the vibe of it. We had this person who had come to South Africa for like volunteer reasons, and people were challenging them with that, and then there was an outbreak. And I feel like it should have started that zombie-ish and ended the zombie-ish, because that one was a 3. The last one, maybe because it was the most experimental, I got put at the end. Udu by Demolaire Followo. I don't know how to rate that one. It was so short and I just didn't like the content. So that makes me want to give it like a 2. This woman threw her baby into a pit and it was just really sad and like, I don't want to say pointless. There's a point to it, but definitely horror. At the end of it all, my final rating is a 31.5. divided amongst 10 stories. That makes it a 3.1. So not even like contestable. If maybe we could just slip it in there. No. And that's not surprising with a short story collection, and I shouldn't have ended here, but I was kind of grasping at straws by the end. And I guess this is a good thing because it leaves you to go, oh my God, Kayla, you didn't think to read this book. You have to read this book. And now there's the opportunity for me to take some fantastic recommendations. I will continue to do my own research. Maybe I'll jump to 2017 next. I definitely have some ideas for 2017 that I'm excited about. 2019 has the most slots to fill, and I think I can find some interesting ones from then. But that is it for us today. I'm not going to apologize for not having huge wins because I couldn't have possibly known how the vlog was going to go out. It's not like I'm not going to post it just because I didn't succeed at my goal. That's the journey that we're on, and that's what I knew we were embarking upon. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video very soon. Bye!